Hi everybody, welcome to our garden. It's June 3rd, 2022, and we are going to do a garden tour together so you can see what we're growing. So later this year, when we harvest things together, you can see where it came from. So without further ado, here is our first garden tour ever, but also our first garden tour of 2022. So these right here are our blueberry bushes. This blueberry bush always does the best for us. We have it covered already, but we need to get these two little guys covered as well because they have a lot of blueberries on them. If not, then the birds will eat them. But the kids love these blueberry bushes. We don't ever really get enough to do anything with because the kids eat them all right off the bush. And then over here in this garden, we have some tomatoes down here. This one is a Cherokee Purple that my in-laws picked up for me, I believe at Lowe's. Those are my very favorite tomatoes. I love Cherokee Purples. And then this one over here, I grew from seed, and I think that one is a Brad's Atomic Grape tomato. And I got those seeds from Baker's Creek. The ones I grew from seed, I planted and thought I would remember what I planted where, and I don't. So I'm just guessing, but we'll know once they start making tomatoes what they are. And then these are all tomatillos. I planted, I believe, 14 or 15 tomatillos this year. This is my second year trying tomatillos. Last year, I started them from seed as well, and something happened to all my seeds last year, and I don't remember if they got root bound or what happened, but almost all of them died. The only thing that lived was one Brad's Atomic Grape, and that did okay then, and then one tomatillo. And tomatillos need to have 2 or more tomatillos so that they can pollinate each other, and I only had one, so it never made fruit. It was a beautiful plant, but we didn't get any tomatillos. But my goal for this year is that we have enough tomatillos to can green enchilada sauce for the whole year, because we love green enchilada sauce. Then here I just have some peas growing. And around this way we have lots of lettuce, and I don't remember what these were. Some kind of green. I actually planted all these greens before I knew I had to go through chemo. We were hoping that I wasn't going to have to do chemo, and some test results came back that they were afraid that the cancer was going to be too high of a risk of coming back, so I ended up having to do chemo. And if you don't know, when you're doing chemo, you can't eat fresh garden produce. Everything has to be cooked. So a lot of this stuff I can't eat right now, but that's okay. My chemo, I only have 3 more rounds left, and then I'm done, and I should be good by August to be able to eat anything out of the garden. So right now the kids are enjoying the lettuce and all of that stuff and everything else. When the tomatoes start coming in, I'll just cook salsa down and eat that. And then when August rolls around, I'm binge eating tomatoes and garden produce. So just warning you now, there will be a lot of tomato sandwiches in my future. That right there, I believe, is curly blue Scotch curled kale, something like that. I really should have written everything down. Chemo brain is no joke. I usually remember everything in my garden, and this year I'm having a hard time, but it all tastes good, so it's good. Here is basil. We like to grow lots of basil for making pesto, and I'm going to do a video about that in the near future as soon as we get enough basil to make pesto. These, I think, are broccolini. I'll know pretty soon when we start seeing what kind of fruits they set. And then in this space in here, I had filled it in with some Swiss chard and radishes that haven't come up yet. Some more lettuce. And these are my little baby broccoli plants. And I have a white marigold there. That is lemon balm, and I have a Dutch iris right there. Around this way, we have a sunflower coming up there. I don't remember which kind I planted. I did some, I think, Russian mammoth, gray striped mammoth, and some double Sun King sunflowers, which look like they're going to be beautiful. And I think some short stuff sunflowers. And then these are the only things I have left to plant right now. My husband went to the auction today to pick up some fruits and vegetables, and he grabbed me a pack of pepperoncini, and some more, oh my goodness, Keystone Giant, I think they are, which is like a big bell pepper. So I need to get those in the ground. And I have tomatoes over here. Most of these are ones I started from seed. That one is one of my Cherokee Purples. But I think this one is another Brad's. That one's a Berkeley Tie-Dye, I think. And there's some peach in here and more Brad's. The peach tomatoes I've never had before, and the Berkeley Tie-Dye I've never had before. The Brad's are really good. The peach tomatoes, the write-up said that they have fuzzy skins like a peach, and they're supposed to taste like a peach. So that should be interesting. We'll have to see how that goes. Here's some blue, some more blue curly Scotch kale. I don't remember. There's two different kinds of kale. That's one of them, and the other bed has the other kind. I have some Brussels in here, some cabbage, and then those are a bunch of my peppers, which something ate this little guy down here in the back, which is kind of sad, but he should come back. And I plant my things very close together, but I always have success doing that, so we just keep doing it that way. It seems to work out well. And we use very, very good soil. We top off the beds every year with a lot of compost, and we compost our chicken manure, so it makes the beds very, very fertile. Here we're already getting tomatillos, and I peeked in there and there are really tomatillos in there, so I'm very excited. They're really cute. I also have some nasturtium in here and some marigolds. The marigolds I only plant because they're supposed to keep away pests. I don't know if they really do, but we plant them anyway. And the nasturtium are actually edible, and you can put them in salads. You can put the flowers in salads, and also you can feed them to your chickens, and they're supposed to help make the yolks even more orange. So that's why we grow those. I have more basil here along the edge in front of the tomatoes, and even a little bit of dill down there. Over here, I have an herb bed. I have my oregano here, some parsley, and rosemary, some weeds. This little guy is I think it's a Lisbon bunching onion. It's some kind of bunching onion. My sage, some cilantro back here, and that is some Zlotyland chamomile, and a poppy there, and it looks like I have a sunflower coming up that just planted itself, and there's some more nasturtium. We have our compost piles here and some mint. We might have to do a video making some mint tea because my kids have already been asking for that. And as you can see, we have plenty of beautiful mint here, which is also boxed in, but the box doesn't seem to keep it contained. I'm always ripping mint out, but that's okay because we use it. In the back here, this is actually called lovage. It is a perennial, and it tastes like celery, so you could use it like celery. And then we have rhubarb here. And this whole bed here, which is also weedy, is full of sweet potatoes. They're kind of hard to see because they're very tiny right now. There they are. It takes them a while to get going here because we are in Pennsylvania and they really love warm weather. But once they get going, these will fill up this whole bed and will be spilling over. Last year I did my sweet potatoes in this bed over here. You can see it's full of potatoes right now. But I had my sweet potatoes in there last year and they were everywhere. They filled up the aisles around them, spilled over. They're beautiful. So by the end of the year, this will be full and probably spilling over, taking up the aisleway. On this arch trellis right here, I have on both sides Armenian yard-long cucumbers, which I get those seeds from Baker's Creek, and we actually use them for juicing, and they make a delicious cucumber juice. So I grew tons of it this year because we didn't have enough last year and ended up running out of being able to make cucumber juice, and it was delicious. It was like the best, most refreshing summer drink you can make. On this side, they're all coming up pretty well. I had planted this side first when it was still a little bit before last frost date, but after looking at the weather, it looked like we were pretty good to be planting them. And then I waited till after a last frost date to plant this side, and they haven't all germinated yet. There's some that had germinated on the end there, but I might have to replant this side if they don't come up soon. And then here I have a whole bed full of mostly red potatoes. And I planted these as soon as we could work the ground. Oh, I wish I had written down the date. It was sometime in March. And took a bit of a chance on them, being that it was so early. But, I mean, they were well protected. And then we strawed over the whole bed to make sure they were even more protected. And it really worked out well for us because they're already flowering, which means that probably here in a few weeks, we could start digging them up and having new potatoes if we wanted. And that's actually our favorite way to eat potatoes, is new potatoes. We take them and we boil them, and my husband mashes them. We put them on a cookie sheet and put a little bit of olive oil and butter and salt on them, and then roast them in the oven quick, and they're delicious. They're so good. Down here, this bed is a bit of a mess this year. My husband put up this extra piece of cattle panel we had, and I have cherry tomatoes here at the bottom. But this used to be a Jerusalem artichoke bed, and we sifted through all the dirt and got them out. If you don't know what Jerusalem artichokes are, they are very, very aggressive, and they will take everything over, and we definitely did not get them all out because they're coming back up. So this bed might go back to Jerusalem artichokes. They are like a really good source of food because you can dig them up all winter long and use them. You actually only harvest them in the winter. So they're one of the few things we can grow here that you harvest in the winter. But none of us, we decided, really love them. So they're just like a just in case we want them kind of a thing. But we transplanted them up at the top by the back alley here, and I'll show you that in a little bit, because they grow really tall and we thought they would be a nice like privacy barrier. But they definitely are not all out of here. So right now I have onions in here, and then a lot of weeds and Jerusalem artichokes coming up. And then I threw in a couple yellowneck squash. So we'll see how they do. I keep pulling the artichokes out. We might just dig all the dirt out of this bed next year and refill it with new dirt and see if that gets rid of them. And we'll just put this dirt up in the new Jerusalem artichoke bed and make sure they're all contained up there. So if you look down this bed, I have all kinds of bush beans. At the bottom I have lima beans coming up. And all along the trellis we have multiple different types of tomatoes, which are hard to see right now because they're very tiny. But I won't be able to tell you what everything is. Some of them have tags, some of them we bought. Actually, I think all of the ones on this trellis are ones I bought. Next year I'd like to try, my goal is next year that we grow all of our tomatoes from seed, since the ones I did this year did so well. But this year, with going through chemo and cancer treatments and everything, we just did some test runs of tomatoes and tomatillos and a few other things, and next year we'll expand. Here's some more tomatillos. And then again, all the way up, I mean, there's a lot of weeds, but all the way up along the front of the bed here are beans. Yellow wax beans. I think I had a few dragon tongue bush beans left from last year. Blue Lake bush beans, and I think one was a kalima bean or a kalima bean. I don't know how you say it, but it was a green bean. And along the back here, more tomatoes. Another goal of mine this year is that I can enough salsa, tomato salsa, to last us all winter long. So we have lots of tomatoes. And yes, I know I need to weed. It is a mess. One of the bad things about going through chemo is with your white blood cell count down, you're really susceptible to infection. So you have to be very careful digging in the dirt, especially since we compost chicken manure. So I have to make sure I have gloves on all the time. And I'm not good about remembering to do that. So sometimes I'll come out here to work and forget my gloves and end up not doing that much. So I have the kids picking weeds for me. But I need to get some fresh straw to lay down so that we can keep some of these weeds at bay. Over here, I have a lot of my spicy peppers. I tried to keep them all together so that the kids wouldn't come out here and just eat them. I have jalapenos, poblanos, cherry hots, and one called a sweet heat. And then I also have those pepperoncini that my husband just bought. Over here, oh, we have trash in our bed. Sometimes that happens. I have to get that later. This is a Logan Berry. We haven't actually tried these yet. It was, I forget, a cross between a blackberry and a something else. But I'm hoping that this one fruits for us this year. And then on this side of the trellis, I did some little tiny melons I got from Baker's Creek. I think they were called a Tigger melon. And they're just starting to come up. I have really tiny little guys here. Let's see. I can find him. Right there he is. You can see him. That's one. There's a couple little tiny ones in here. So they just germinated and started coming up. And then on this side, we used to have 2 grapes. We planted 2 last year. One didn't make it through the winter. And then this one seems to be doing really well. It's making little tiny babies. There's the little baby grapes. So cute. But this will be our first year actually having grapes on our grape arbor here. I'd like to do both sides with grapes eventually and replace this one that didn't do well. But we're still learning how to grow grapes. So that's a work in progress. This is right here. Let me see if I can stand back and give you a wider shot. This is a bed that I planted zucchini, sunflowers, and a couple of butternut squash. So the sunflowers should come up all along the back here and be kind of like a privacy screen. I put some butternut squash in the middle, I think 2. They have not germinated yet. So I'm not sure what's going on with those. They were just cheapo seeds from the dollar store last year. They were clearancing them out. So we're just trying them. So yeah, I don't see them. So it might just end up being sunflowers and zucchini. And then here in the front, I have zucchini that I planted from seed that are doing really well. Also a lot of weeds, but that's just part of gardening. We just pluck them out when we have time. I have 6 zucchini here altogether. And then these back here are the Jerusalem artichoke. They get to be, probably like 9 or 10 feet tall, and they almost look like sunflowers, but with little tiny yellow daisy heads at the top. They're kind of wild and crazy looking, but they do make a nice barrier. And as you can see, we have an alley back here, so it's nice to have a barrier. This is my pumpkin bed. Also, more weeds. But on this side, I started the pumpkins from seed in the garden. I did a little experiment. I know some people say like pumpkins aren't good for starting inside, that it's better to just start them out in the garden. So I did 2 here on this side, and I think 2 in the middle that it's hard to see in this lighting with the weeds, but directly in the garden. And then down here, I'll show you, I started these guys right here, this one and that one, inside a couple weeks before it was time to plant them out. And they're actually doing beautiful. They're about to set some blossoms, which is nice. And I filled this bed up with a lot, probably more than you should, of pumpkin seeds, but that's okay because we have all this space here for them to sprawl out on these wood chips. So I did intentionally plant them heavy because I wanted them to sprawl out. And then I have a little fig tree baby coming up here. And we have strawberries over here. I have calendula in that box there that are just starting to sprout. And this is our kids' dig pit, which they love to come play in. And then on this trellis right here, I have planted some sugar baby watermelons that are going to grow up the trellis on both sides. And over here is another sweet potato bed. I forget what all different varieties I got. I know some were Beauregard. I think some were called Sweet Henry, maybe? I can't remember. I should just start them myself, but I never do. Oh, Henry sweet potato. It's an heirloom white. I don't think I had those last year, so that'll be something new. And then back here, I had actually at one point sprinkled Cosmo seeds. And then the night before my first chemo treatment, We found a bunch of potatoes in the back of the closet that were sprouting, a little red potatoes and some white potatoes. And I was like, oh, I need to go put them in the garden. We can't waste these. So I came out here and put them in the garden and forgot that I had put in Cosmo seeds. So now we have potatoes and Cosmos growing in the same garden, and I can't pluck them out. That makes me sad. So we're just going to do an experiment and see if they live happily together. Probably not, but we'll see. And then down here, I had 3 extra tomatoes. We had actually had on the long wall of tomatoes, I believe it was a skunk, but I'm not really sure, came along and pulled out about 8 or 10 tomatoes and just left them lay in the dirt. And I didn't come out that morning and look at the garden. I waited until the evening. And when I came out and saw them, I was so sad. They were all shriveled up and they looked horrible. We had had a really hot day. So my sweet husband Ethan went and bought me 2 new 4-packs of tomatoes to replace them. But we also tried putting them back in the ground. So some of them took, some of them we had to replace. So we had these 3 extra. And we put them back here, and we're going to do an experiment and grow them up just like a 1x2 piece of wood, and single stalk them all the way up the 1x2, and my gardener does that. And we tried it about 2 years ago, and I wasn't very diligent about how I pruned them, and they got crazy and pulled the stakes over. So we're going to try it again and see. But usually we do all of our tomatoes up cattle panels, and it works out well for us. So that is our garden tour. That's pretty much everything we have in the garden this year. I do have some other areas. We have some blackberries behind the shed, and raspberries. I forget what else, but we're not going to walk over there right now because it's just getting dark, which I don't know if you can tell on the screen how dark it's getting, but it is getting really dark. The kids got a sprinkler pirate pool from their grandma, and they were playing in it all day. That's down here. We have the tent set up too, because when you're doing chemo for a couple weeks after each treatment, you're really susceptible to the sun. So I sit down here in our little tent, which we have pulled down for the night, and the kids get to play in their little pirate pool. But here is just a shot of the garden from below. And that's our 2022 garden. So hopefully you enjoyed this garden tour, and we'll try and do one every couple of weeks so you can see how the garden is growing. And then once we start harvesting things, there's a loud truck going by. Once we start harvesting things, we'll get to come out here together, get things out of the garden, bring them into the kitchen, and actually cook with them. Maybe do some canning together, maybe do some freezing together, and see what we're actually making out of the garden, which is my absolute favorite part of doing the garden, is bringing things in and harvesting them and cooking and getting to eat what you grew from a little tiny seed. It's very fulfilling. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this garden tour, and we'll see you next time.